Guess who just started making fanfics? Is it that person with the goofy smiling face? I'm just messing with you guys. That's me posing a selfie for random fun. I did have a lot of fun writing stories when I was a kid, but it really wasn't that fun until I reached year 7 when I had to write a short narrative for my English tutor. Even though she fixed half of the story, still making the narrative there was fun. The short narrative then turned into a full story titled Kurokai Butsu 1, The Mansion and the Two Friends. What does Kurokai Butsu translate to? Black Monster. Both plots are two friends named Bob and Tom walking somewhere else in one stormy night, only to find themselves in a huge mansion that is obscured as a rumor, and the trees of the forest reserve cover it up. The only difference is the fact that the original narrative only covered up the mansion part, which was the second half of the final story. The full story only expanded up the plot and doubled or tripled the original narrative up. Then I started writing more stories, including a sequel of the story and the Airplane series, which was based on the Roblox game and Squid Game. This was all before I began YouTube on Christmas Day 2021. However, this is not what we are talking about. We are talking about my latest fanfic on Wattpad titled Our Oni One Last Escape. One day when realizing that the Oni from the original game is nothing but a generic man-eater and his story wasn't explored further enough, I decided I should make a fanfic in order to have his backstory revealing a little more detail about his past. Initially, I wanted to draw inspiration from version 6.23, which is by far the most popular version of the game has to offer, and many people recognize this as the original one. However, I started having second thoughts and I was like, nah, this version is too obvious. However, in particular, I like the real original version of the game, which people refer to as version 1.0 or 1.1, released way back in November 2008. There were more characters, and the mansion looked fancy to me, even though the front door thing didn't make sense to everyone, especially when that kid over there is able to open the front door and not everyone else. Before being introduced to fanfics, I thought fanfics and fan animation were the same thing, and I did not like them at all initially. For example, if I stumbled across Eddsworld and waited for their new animation, I'd end up getting in a fan animation, which sort of angered me a lot, thinking it was false advertisement. I was introduced to Wattpad in mid to late October last year, where I read a story called Incomplete Chaos, at least the first one. Before then, I wasn't very fond of Splatoon, except for the fact I heard about it in game magazines and stuff like that. This very story right here made my inspiration to make one fanfic, which is One Last Escape, even though the two have nothing similar to each other. Right after I finished reading Incomplete Chaos, I started writing a fanfic about Our Oni, because I thought there were barely any fanfics about the game. What I didn't know at the time was there were dozens of fanfics about Our Oni, especially Ender Oni, which has 500,000 reads, which is surprising. The four main characters were very hard to name. I couldn't think of any Japanese names at all. Well, some of them at least, thanks to the anime I used to watch. However, despite the Japanese content I watched, I wasn't satisfied with any of the names, so I decided to look for common Japanese names on adoption.com. Surnames were even harder as well. I had to search up for Japanese celebrities in order to get their surnames when I finished writing the story. I got Satoshi's surname after Kazuya Nakai, is known for voicing Zoro in One Piece, and Kana's surname was taken from James Saito. The surnames, as I mentioned before, were decided when I finished writing the fanfic. At the time I started writing the fanfic, I was up to Scream 4, and I had yet to watch Scream 5, otherwise known as Scream 2022, even though I knew some parts of it. If you guys have watched Scream, you might obviously know that Hiroshi was heavily based off of Dewey, and Kazuya was based off of Mark in the third movie. Well, sort of at least. The Oni's characterization had to be way different from the original version, as the Oni in the game had no personality at all. One night I watched Rise of the Planet of the Apes when I was sick, and saw at least one ape talking like a human, and then I watched the next movie, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, just bit by bit, and would see how the apes talk. So I got the Oni's dialogue off of the apes that talk, and that's why he speak English in a bad grammar. The inspiration for the recent Five Nights at Freddy's movie came in late during writing, probably when I first planned out chapter 12. If you haven't watched the FNAF movie, spoilers may come ahead, so listen at your own caution. The scene where Purple Guy stabs his daughter Vanessa in the side of a torso, that was based on the scene where the Oni bites Blockman so hard it splits him in half. Not the scene where the babysitter gets bitten by Freddy in half, even though these two scenes look nearly the same. In fact, I wanted to make the Oni have zero redeeming qualities at all. All the bodies in that one room where the Oni keeps, I decided to have hundreds of them inside, because if there were thousands, the bodies would be too much to fit inside one room. If you want to know how many, there are between 300 and 400 bodies kept in that room. And the fact that the Oni turns the bodies into him in the original game, in this version on the other hand, was originally going to trap souls inside a white thick void, but I thought, nah. The reason why I scrapped this was because I didn't want a mature category in my page, even though the story itself was gory enough. Now you know the reason why there are hundreds of souls at the end of the fanfic. Because of this, I wasn't so sure about how the fanfic would end for real, and I was like, screw it, make the ghosts appear out of the mansion. Blockman didn't come to development until I started writing chapter 11. At first, I didn't want any other Onis to appear in the fanfic, but when I was inspired by the FNAF movie, I decided to put Blockman in the fanfic anyways. The progress of the writing took 2 months overall, as I said a few times before. Initially, one chapter would take 1 week to write, and I continued to do so until chapter 4, I think, because I thought that my work was progressing too slowly. So I started making chapters 4 to 8 quickly, probably in like 2 weeks or so. The title of the 7th chapter was originally going to be the 8th chapter's title, because I was too busy adding in other stuff midway through writing. And if I had the space to write the 8th chapter and the 7th chapter, then the chapter would be too long. Chapters would last for 809 to 900 words, usually, but except for chapters 4, 10, and 13, which were over 1,000 words long. The last 5 chapters of the story were hard to write. It was one heck of a write. Every 20 words I would type in the words in bold and then back to normal, bold, back to normal, and so on. In the end, I found it enjoyable and all the hard work I put through the fanfic. I wanted you guys to read it and see what it's like. Right now, I'm not sure if I should make a sequel or not. My benefits of a sequel have the Oni returning back, even though he got stabbed to death in my protests against the sequel, are the fact that the Oni has died at the end by getting impaled with a spike pit, and he got shot over 8 times, and also the fact that the title is literally called One Last Escape. If I ever make the sequel, the story will go on like this. A psychotic doctor goes to a mansion, brings the Oni out of a spike pit, experiments him, and resurrects him, so he can cause a rampage across Nagoya. Right now I have no idea what title I should give it. The Very Last Escape? The One Very Last Escape? I'm not sure. If you guys can give me ideas for a title if you ever want a sequel, I'd be happily obliged to read out requests. My next fanfic will be about Mega Man stopping a mixed robot master named Explosive Gut Sinking Cop Man, based on Super Mario Bros. Z. I'm gonna have to watch Dragon Ball Z properly in order to prepare for this fanfic. Anyways, if you guys have more requests for a fanfic from me, I'll be happy to write more for you guys, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.